Hello and welcome to The Drum. I'm Peter Lloyd. Coming up tonight, should taxpayers fund compensation for the cattle industry after the live export ban to Indonesia? Would raising the price of cheap grog really stop problem drinking? And could Barack Obama be a one-termer? Our panel tonight, Tim Wilson from the Institute of Public Affairs, the ABC's online chief political writer Annabel Crabb, and Dan Ilic from Hungry Beast. Ilic, in fact. My apologies.
It's whatever you prefer, really. I don't care.
We'll get off to an even better start with the federal government, which has bowed to pressure from animal welfare groups and public opinion, suspending all live exports to Indonesia for up to 6 months. Agriculture Minister Joe Ludwig confirmed the ban at a news conference this morning.
Obviously, this is a significant decision, and it deserves a well-considered decision-making process and an informed response. The safeguards the government puts in place will ensure the long-term sustainability of the industry, while also ensuring that the cattle exported from Australia are not mistreated.
Well, the woman who filmed some of those shocking images on Four Corners that led to the ban, Lynn White from Animals Australia, says she still has deep concerns.
I think there's a huge challenge ahead of the government to, in any way, address the concerns of the Australian community. I know the minister's put a 6-month period on that, but I think once again we have a problem of where he's listening to industry. You know, it's industry that got producers into this predicament, it's industry that contributed to animal cruelty in Indonesia, and we were disturbed this morning to hear once again that the minister was relying on industry for his advice.
And the Greens agreed the federal government hasn't gone far enough.
We need to go further, and I will be introducing a bill into Parliament on the 20th of June that will cease all live animal exports immediately.
The livestock industry is devastated by the ban, but says graziers are committed to improving conditions for animals.
We're disappointed that it's had to come to this, but we understand why they've done it, that they need to be sure that the systems are in place for those abattoirs. I mean, we know ourselves that some of those abattoirs are up to Australian standards. So my feeling is that this could be done pretty quickly to get some of those abattoirs up to scratch. I mean, the outcome that we're looking for is that we can be confident that animals going through those abattoirs are going to be treated humanely.
While Queensland Independent MP Bob Katter echoed the thoughts of some producers expressing anger at the peak livestock body's lack of action.
The MLA, the Meat and Livestock Corporation, gets $5 for the sale of every ox in Australia. $60 or $70 million. Well, I want to know what we're getting for our $60 or $70 million.
So they've done nothing, Mr. Katter.
It would appear that they have simply done nothing at all.
Well, we've got a lot to get through, but we'll start there with Bob Katter. Tim Wilson, should Meat and Livestock Australia be compensating its members for trading losses?
Well, I think it's a really difficult issue generally, particularly because normally in a transaction you buy and you sell something, and once it's off your hands, that's it. You have no longer any sense of responsibility. In this situation, you have this supply chain issue now where somebody's bought something and we're taking concern about the way it's being slaughtered at the long end. And so I ultimately think we need to find a way that appropriately manages that. This is fundamentally a public policy perception issue about whether we should be managing what's happening in other slaughterhouses, and there needs to be some sort of judgment call made by the government about whether it needs to pay the costs associated with this. It's very odd.
But haven't the members of the Meat and Livestock Australia been sold a dud by their own organisation?
Well, yes and no, and this is part of the challenge because as I said, ordinarily when you sell something, it's somebody else's problem, and what there hasn't been is this appropriate watching brief, obviously by the industry association throughout the time. But it's not as though these concerns have come out of nowhere. I'm sure there's been plenty of evidence along the way of people raising concerns about the issue. But I also think the government's response of just banning live exports probably goes too far for 6 months.
We'll come to that.
We'll come to that.
Okay. Annabel, just jump in here on the meat and livestock question.
Oh, well, I was going to say this is a kind of an atypical government decision in any case, because it's sort of something that the government's been forced into because of the strength of popular opinion. You get the very strong suspicion that the Agriculture Minister wasn't terribly in favour of all of this until he was rounded upon by a group of angry caucus colleagues on the issue, all of whom seem much more exercised about what happens to cattle when they hit the high seas than what happens to people when they hit the high seas, but that's another question, I suppose. So the question of the role of the representative body, I think, is a pretty important and ongoing one. But you have to shuffle out here how all the players are going to interact with this particular circumstance. I mean, everyone's being forced into this by a discovery and a strong public response that militates for some sort of outcome. What's going to happen, I don't know, and who's going to pay for it, I think, is even less certain.
Dan, what are your thoughts on this one?
I reckon compensation is definitely on the table. It's pretty incredible that such public opinion can be roused, considering that Four Corners got the lowest ratings of it. The particular episode is the lowest ratings all year. I wish we could do the same on Hungry Beast, but too many people are watching State of Origin generally for anything to happen. But it's kind of amazing. That footage is so powerful, so impactful. I think if you just added some sound effects, it would go well on Saturday night on Channel 9 with Funniest Home Videos. But it's kind of one of those things where if the government is going to take that away from those producers, I think compensation is definitely on the cards. I have strong opinions on this where I feel like what Tim was saying, when you kind of sell the product and the product goes out, it's kind of out of your hands. But at the same time, I think people are kind of forgetting that this industry is so strange that this cattle is being bred to end up dead. It's kind of such a strange... It's a strange idea to me that people are kidding themselves. This is not happening all around the world, and it's not happening with every other kind of livestock as well.
Sure, and as you sit down and watch Four Corners, you know, hoeing into your bowl,
hoeing into my double quarter pounder meal.
But I think what you can guarantee is we're going to see a wholesale change of people at the top of the industry association, because...
interesting question, because they don't have their next annual general meeting until November. Now, that's a long time away.
It is, but if it really, and it will hit, the bottom lines of a lot of these farmers, it will ultimately result in them starting to lose result in them losing significant confidence in their industry association, and whether that leadership is actually doing the right thing by the industry. Because industry associations, if nothing else, are supposed to keep a watching brief of different issues as they arise. And this one is just clearly being...
It's actually not paying fees to get that, then.
Exactly. I mean, the whole idea of compensation from the industry association is a bit odd, because it's your money just being given back to you. What they need is change.
Let me just draw all of your attention to this one, and this is difficult for them to shirk accountability here. The Board of Meat and Livestock Australia, according to their charter, which is online and available for everyone to look at, says that they are, quote, responsible for ensuring the MLA acts legally and responsibly on all matters, and that the highest ethical standards are maintained.
And to what extent does that obligation extend offshore?
Yes.
Well, this is tough for them to say this is not something that we have to be responsible for. Their members are going to come after them on this one. I should say that Don Heatley, the chairman of MLA, was invited onto the program tonight for the second time and chose not to be here. His spokespeople said that they had other people out in the news market, including graziers, talking about this. But the point that I think we're making here is that they are not the office holders from the MLA who are accountable for this stuff. Lynn White says the industry can't be trusted. You might say, well, she would say that, but does she not have a point?
Well, I think that it's interesting that the organisation in question is spitting out some people that are closer to the production process to be the spokespeople here. And, you know, I think there's a fair argument that graziers are often, you know, among the most concerned for the welfare of animals while they're under their care and control. I mean... if you've entrusted an industry organisation to have oversight over what's happening internationally, and, you know, the Australian live export industry is no stranger to these concerns. I mean, like in 2003, remember when we all went through the Cormo Express, that shipload of about 60,000 sheep that was rejected from Saudi Arabia? I mean, that captured the Australian imagination just as securely as this incident has captured it now. You know, remember we were talking about nothing but that group, that bunch of sheep bobbing around.
It seems all of Australia's problems are boat related. That's what it really says.
Does it make you question the sincerity of what you hear from meat and livestock now, that they're going to make this commitment to doing this and that, when these things are not? They're not new on the radar.
No, but that in itself, I think this particular event has been so shocking. It is going to affect the reputation of the industry, and either the incumbents or those who may take over from them after November will have as part of their duty and responsibility and vision for the organisation to fix this, because they can't afford to continually have these sorts of examples pop up out of the middle of nowhere. I suspect they're going to take it more seriously than they ever would have before. The question is...
You don't think so?
Yeah, well, I don't think they have any choice, to be quite frank.
I think, like, in 6 months' time, this is pretty much a diversion tactic just to deal with this outrage at the moment. Because at the moment, there's an enormous amount of media outrage and public discourse about what's going on. And give it 6 months, and this issue's not going to... There'll be another issue on the horizon.
No, but if you have
it just won't exist.
If you have an issue and then it repeats itself in 6 months, then again, what you see is a pattern of behaviour which really fundamentally undermines confidence in the industry. I don't think they can have that. They can take that risk, to be quite frank. We'll wait and see whether they honour their word, but they'd be very foolish not to do so.
I think the whole compensation issue, you've got to probably give it a little bit before you assess exactly what sort of money we're talking about here. We don't really have any idea of how long this process is going to take. We haven't really got a formal response from Indonesia about how cooperative they're going to be in this enterprise.
They're going to
although one can make some guesses.
I was going to say they're going to hand them shopper dockets for Black Stump. That's probably appropriate compensation.
Hey, now, the one thing that I was...